please subscribe and don't forget to press the bell icon to get notified whenever we upload a new video.
With that backdrop, let's invite our market master for the morning, Gautam Trivedi, co-founder and managing partner, Nepean Capital, joins us in our studio. Good morning, Gautam. Always a pleasure having you with us. Indexes have not done much. At this point in time, are you a buyer at all? Do you think it's a good pause the market is giving long-term investors?
I think the market is going to basically drift until the next elections because we've got a bunch of events, including other elections,
state elections. But that's all the way till May 2019 before we get the result. Yes,
unfortunately, I think that is the case. It's a very stock pickers market going forward, and I think has been for the start of this year at least. And I think there are a bunch of issues that are plaguing the market. Of course, foreigners are continuing to exit the market. We've seen the number now swell to $750 million of net outflows year to date. So that's a big number in itself. The SIPs continue to remain strong, which I think is positive. But over and above the SIPs, we're not seeing incrementally that much money coming in now from retail investors. So if you look at even what's competing with equity as an asset class, real estate, thankfully, is still dormant and it's not showing any signs of life as of yet. But having said that, the fixed deposit rates, I mean, if you look at them today, are now moving up. So a 1 year fixed deposit rate of for an amount of more than £1 crore is now yielding 7.25%. And if you're a senior citizen, it's another 50 basis points. Yeah. So I think these are issues which the market is grappling with. And of course, I think foreigners need to come back at some point.
Okay, Gautam, hi, good morning. I wanted your thoughts on what's happening with the PSU banks. You know, this whole IBC, NCLT process, people are getting a bit hopeful about the resolution and the impact it would have on PSU banks. You think this is a good place to be for investors, or would you stay away?
I think I'd stay away from PSU banks. And, frankly, I've been asked this question even as late as early last year on this channel and, of course, the other channels. And I think the fact is that are we today even at the halfway point? I hope we've definitely crossed that, but I think a lot of pain is still left. If you look at the power sector, for example, if you look at PFC's numbers, which came in for the last quarter, their NPLs dramatically rose by 12,000 crores from 5.7% gross NPLs to 9.6% as a percentage of total loans outstanding. So I don't think that problem has even hit the banking sector yet, unfortunately. So I think that pile up, and as rates start going up, I think that problem will continue. Secondly, on the IBC question, Sonia, which you asked me, I think the issue there is that it's gotten off to a great start. So 3 resolutions out of the top 12, I think is fantastic. But you have only 40 judges for over 5,000 cases. So that, I think, is a bigger issue. So we've had in the past, I think, pretty good bankruptcy resolution and reforms. But the fact is, the absolute infrastructure to solve these problems, remains a bottleneck. So I think we need to see that step up as well from the government.
Okay. But I would assume a bit of the power has been recognized because of the Reserve Bank telling banks that,
that's right.
In 6 months you either resolve or take to NCLT. To some extent, some of the recognition has come. But therefore, where would you look? If you're not looking at, you said it's a stock pickers market.
Yeah.
Clearly, one sector you have ruled out, not PSU banks. Private banks, of course, everyone flocks to the retail guys.
Yeah.
But what about the corporate lenders in the private sector?
I think ICICI Bank is now trading at 1.1 times price to book. It's cheaper than even SBI. Not taking anything away from SBI, but the fact is it's, and a lot of people benchmark the two together. I think until the Chanda Kochhar issue is not fully resolved, and I don't want to be a judge on which way it's going to go, but the reality is I think a lot of investors are staying away from the stock for that very reason. Even at 1.1 times, people are concerned if, is she going to stay, is she not going to stay? And if the fact is, if she leaves, I think would be a positive. But there's a lot of talk and chatter and concern around that. Until that isn't resolved, I don't see the stock necessarily moving up. On Axis, I think at 1.5, 1.6 times, I think a lot of the bad news seems to be starting to get priced in. We'll have to see who the successor is to Shikha.
Okay. What do you do with a stock like Tata Motors? I mean, whatever the management tries to do, how much ever they try to assuage concerns, the stock just refuses to move up.
Yeah.
You see inherent problems there?
No, I think it's been an underperformer for the last 4 years. I fully agree with what you're saying. And but I think, we've got to give Chandra a chance to try and, resicate this stock, because you're right, it hasn't really done much. The good news is on the domestic side, you're seeing both the passenger vehicles and the trucks starting to actually gain traction. I believe the new launches have been very well received on the passenger vehicle segment. As far as the rest of Tata Motors is concerned, I think there seems to be a real restructuring underway with the selling of investments in non-core assets. And of course, the employee stock option plan, hopefully that will yield results as well.
Okay. Mid-caps, they've seen a lot of sell-off in the past 12 months after a roaring 2017. Where will you look for value?
So, I think it's again very stock specific, and every major fund manager from maybe early last year was hoping and praying for a mid-cap correction. Now that it's finally come, people are panicking and wondering, oh, gee, where do we go from here? And, is the mid-cap story over? And, really talks of doom. The reality is there are, some very strong companies that are linked to different sectors. I'll give you an example. Kajaria Ceramics, terrific company, okay? But that whole sector has been linked to the real estate sector, which in turn, of course, is struggling, as we've discussed earlier. So I think some of these companies are very good and, starting to look very attractive from an entry point. So would I write off the mid-cap space? Not at all. I think, there's some great value picks in the mid-cap space.
Okay, you spoke about Kajaria.
Yeah.
Tell us elsewhere, where would value emerge? What kind of stocks interest you?
Stocks, I think, that have listed in India, have the headquarters and the manufacturing bases in India, but their business is mostly offshore. So Motherson Sumi, I think I discussed this the last time as well on your show, which I think is a phenomenal story.
52-week low now.
Yes, absolutely. So I think look at that. I'm tempted to look at pharma as a space where businesses are overseas but they're headquartered in India, but I think that's still some time away, unfortunately.
They've risen about 20% this month.
Yes, they have, but there's a big talk about the third wave in the pharma industry starting when I haven't really seen too much evidence.
Who would you put on your radar to judge? Would it be the Aurobindos or would it be the the bigger boys like Sun, Lupin, Dr. Reddy's? Where would your eyes be trained?
I think you're seeing a lot of places where there are generational changes and shifts taking place. So if you look at Cadila, as Mr. Pankaj Patel, has handed over the reins to his son, I think he's a very competent guy. I've spent personally time with him, and I'm very impressed with him. So I think that's the thing you want to look at from where do some of these companies go forward. Similarly with Nilesh at Lupin, and Nilesh and Vanita both, of course. But again, phenomenal transformation and taking the company to the next level.
Okay, so talking about taking the company to the next level, today Mahindra & Mahindra is in focus because they're having their first ever farm day in Nagpur. And the company is now focusing a lot on not just tractors but the entire farm, the agri business.
Yeah.
You think from these all-time highs there's still more to go for a stock like M&M?
I think you brought up a great stock because I've always wondered why Mahindra & Mahindra does not perform. So if you look at the last 4 years, the stock's really gone nowhere, unfortunately. Over the last 5 years, stock's doubled, but over the last 4 years, the stock's done nothing. And if you look at Mahindra & Mahindra as a company, it ticks literally all the boxes from a corporate governance standpoint, management bandwidth standpoint, a great play on rural India.
Yes.
So you've got everything going for it, but the stock refuses to perform and remains range bound. So I'm not sure what that trigger is going to be to actually have the stock break out and really show significant performance from here on.
Okay. Speaking of management changes and stocks breaking out, Jubilant Food took your breath away. What about your view on Jubilant Food itself and generally the consumption space?
So that brings me to a segment of the country which, is seems to be in its own orbit, which is the auto space. Right? So if you look at Maruti, and I was talking to a fund manager last week itself, and I said, why is the stock going up? And, the more you think about it, because the rest of the country seems to be not doing that well as much as, some of the auto companies are doing. I think it's definitely a reflection of the 7th Pay Commission that's clearly kicked in. And, discretionary spending is coming back. And Maruti has always historically been a big beneficiary of the 7th Pay Commission or the Pay Commission increases.
This space of consumption related a lot to both urban and rural consumption, whether, it's names like Bata, Britannia, Pidilite, Page Industries, all of them hitting new highs. Valuations, of course, going through the roof. But from that space, what do you like the most?
I like all of them, actually. So. And a lot of companies, of course, specific to Pidilite.
Can you repeat the list?
I know. Can you repeat the list? I'll buy all of them. But the reality is that I think a lot of companies are starting to attack the adhesives space. So Astral, for example, is now going after that space as well. And again, a great story, done a phenomenal job in the CPVC market. And I hope they can repeat the success in adhesives as well.
Okay. Well, I wanted to come to the NBFCs. Their heyday, of course, was post-demonetization when wholesale rates crashed.
Yeah.
Now good competition coming from the banks. But Bajaj Finance is still at all-time highs.
Yeah. See,
how do you sift over there?
I think every industry has got a leader like a Bajaj Finance, which has just been a significant rocking compounding story. I mean, the market cap is, of course, more than Bajaj Auto now. But the reality is, I think that company is going to just go from strength to strength. Phenomenal leadership. And anybody holding the stock should continue to own it. I would not sell that.
Okay. You spoke about Astral Poly, right? That was the stock. Okay, in the adhesive space. We should just get that stock up for you. I think it's given 20% returns in this year itself. Any of these sort of companies that you're looking at? The smaller ones, the non-index large caps?
I would look at... I think, let me bring up telecom for a minute. And I've been very, very bearish on the telecom space. But I think, and people ask me all the time, what should you buy in the telecom space? Idea at 60 rupees or 50 rupees, is that a buy? And I think the answer is no, frankly. I'd rather buy, given the onslaught and given the pain that's going on in the telecom space, I'd rather buy companies that are beneficiaries of the 4G movement, which is, let's say, Saregama or Shimaru. Okay. I'd put money on these companies.
Okay, that's interesting. Clearly the way in which India is entertaining itself has changed a goodish bit, especially with Relgio making data so cheap and accessible. Thank you very much, Gautam Trivedi. It's always a pleasure having you with us, and perhaps we will have more occasion to speak to you. This is going to be a year of elections, so let's see how things pan out on that end as well. Thank you very much
for
joining us.